Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the top-level talks on the Northern Ireland Protocol, which took place yesterday. May not even know about it. It's the first in nearly a year, and even though the issue has it's hardly been hiding in the background, thanks to the DUP throwing their toys out the pram, but you may actually have missed the news yesterday, and I think that'll be quite a good thing. And I'm going to be discussing what's been agreed, whether this is looking like a real breakthrough, because things have sounded hopeful before, and what the reporting of it, or non-reporting as the case may be, might mean for the future of Brexit throughout the UK. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So we're hurtling towards the silver anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. It's taken a lot of work, trust and good faith from people across the political divide in Northern Ireland and beyond to make it work. The Good Friday Agreement was always a strange construct, but it worked. However, it only worked because both the UK and the Republic of Ireland were in the EU single market effectively. That was the most important aspect of it. It would be the case if we'd left the EU, but we'd stopped there with Brexit, we didn't go any further. Again, we wouldn't be having these major issues in Northern Ireland. But we had to let the Tories take us out with a hard Brexit. Now the Good Friday Agreement faces its greatest threat. There will be no doubt celebrating of the 25 years of the peace process, but it will be soured by that threat hanging overhead. And Rishi Sunak seemed to want to give the impression that he was going to deal with the protocol issues in time for the anniversary this Easter. Whether because he's more pragmatic than Johnson and just realises, look, we need to get this sorted now, and just wanted it done, or whether because he wanted his all smiles and backslaps visit with the US president, I don't know. The talks that took place yesterday were a little bit of a test. You know, it had already been realised that no final settlement was going to be reached. There wasn't going to be a final deal done, implement it, finished, that's it, can we stop now? But how would the government engage? Well, the news sounds very hopeful, and wherever you read it, James Cleverly, leading the talks on the UK side, didn't seem interested in divisive rhetoric, which is all to the good. There was an agreement to share data, which is absolutely essential in easing physical checks. I mean, for years we've had UK going, oh, we don't need so many physical checks, and the EU going, yeah, we said this before. You need to share data. We need to be able to see where things are going. Then we can be sure that the risk is as low as you're saying it is. And the UK go, no, yeah, we said we would, but no. So now we're saying we are actually going to do this now. All sounds very good. Hopefully that will be it. But I can't help read the reports of the agreement, in principle, that's what it is, on the various issues and think, we've been here before, haven't we? Because back when Michael Gove was heading up the talks for the UK, he and Maros Shevchovich, who's the Deputy President for the EU Commission, also came to an agreement on basically this platform, on the practical implication of the protocol. The ERG got upset. Boris Johnson had to replace Gove with David Frost. And all of a sudden, that agreement, which all sounded like it was done and dusted, up in the air again. You know, we've had no serious progress since. In fact, although Frost was gone by the start of 2022 and Truss calmed things down a little, last year was still the year when really the ERG forced the creation of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. That was a big step back. You know, and I am imagining behind the scenes, Sunak is desperately explaining the political situation to the EU and going, look, I am determined to get a final agreement here so that it's never needed. But the fact that it's there, the fact that it could be passed by Parliament, we still don't know if it will, but I'm not hearing signs that it's not going to be. That will still represent a legislative means of breaking a vital treaty with the EU. So the timing of the protocol aside, Sunak does need this deal to be finalised this year. Okay, it's not going to be finalised in time for Easter, but for this year. But what do the ERG think? Well, when Truss promoted two figures from the ERG to the Northern Ireland office, I will admit I was quite concerned. Sunak kept them both in place when he took over. But I think I have to say now, I've changed my mind a little, I think it's a useful barometer of realistic progress. Because having such influential members of the ERG handling the day-to-day situation in Northern Ireland means, first of all, the onus is on them to come up with practical solutions. It's basically like saying, it's all right you carping from the sidelines. Why don't you deal with it then? But then they also have to talk publicly about the issues as well. In fact, we've seen Steve Baker get quite upset with the DUP in his time as in the Northern Ireland office. You know, you get the impression that maybe we're getting to a point where there is a practical implementation of the protocol that will satisfy Tory MPs, including their very pro-Brexit wing. And it will only be the likes of the DUP, TUV and others who are still refusing to accept it. But I'm not getting the impression that the Tories care these much, you know, about what they think these days. You know, they're talking to them in order to try and get Stormont up and running again, of course, but they don't seem to mind identifying the DUP as the barrier to progress rather than the EU these days. You know, there are no magic solutions. The Brexiteers and Unionists in Northern Ireland try and come up with magical solutions. There aren't any. Even the Tories seem to have given up trying to find one. Or maybe they always knew there wasn't one and it was just a case of waiting for the public to become bored of the issue so that they could sit down and sort it out properly. After all, lots of people in Britain are now realising that Brexit's making a mess of their own lives. I kept talking, particularly in 2021 on this channel, I was talking so much about the fact, you know, they're making this big deal out of the Brexit for Northern Ireland. And actually, you know, as if the trade barriers set up by the protocol were really terrible things. And it's like, they're way looser than the trade barriers you've set up between Britain and EU countries. So if there's a problem with trade between Britain and Northern Ireland, how much worse is it? But apparently it's fine. Apparently there's no problem with trade between Britain and the EU. That's not an issue. And yet the much easier trade between Britain and Northern Ireland is a massive issue. Whoa. Didn't make sense from a practical point of view. It was all this sovereignty nonsense again. You know, but nowadays people in Britain are seeing actually we're being screwed. You know, so there's not a lot of political capital in pointing out the problems that may or may not be being caused to Northern Ireland to people who are living around the south of England who are going, yeah, okay, fine. We don't actually know a lot about Northern Ireland in all honesty, but we can see we're being buggered by it. So because we're not seeing a lot of argy-bargy over the protocol from Tory MPs, because Sunak and Cleverly, they're now agreeing to practical solutions, even if they're not much different to the ones Gove agreed 2 years ago. But unlike a couple of years ago, we're not seeing a backlash from Tory MPs over the issue. Well, I've not anyway. So I think we can be reasonably confident that Northern Ireland is no longer seen as a Brexit battleground for them, and we can quietly move to a proper solution. And I'll point this out. This is what Labour are wanting to do with Brexit in power. You know, come to agreements with the EU that find practical solutions which will help people and businesses on the ground without a lot of fuss in the media. You know, there was hardly any reporting of the agreement yesterday in the mainstream media. If you looked for it, you could find it, but it wasn't in your face. You know, the newspapers, the front pages are still banging on about Harry. They've been doing that for, oh God, how long has that been going on for now? You look for it, you find it. There's an article on the BBC website, which I never saw anywhere near the main headlines. I had to look for it. It's all just been done normally now. In fact, this morning, when again I went to the BBC News to find it, right? And I look for it, and it's in the Northern Ireland section. It's in the Northern Ireland section, but it has less prominent. There's two articles about it. One of the articles is talking about the talks that are about to happen. And then the other article is saying what's happened as a result of those talks. The one that's saying that these talks are about to happen still has more prominence in their Northern Ireland section than the one where they're saying what actually happened. You know, so things have just been done normally now. In the past, before Brexit, these sort of discussions, you wouldn't see them in the media. Every now and then when an agreement was about to be finalised, after years of negotiations usually, the news would mention something there. Even then, it's probably not going to be front page news, you know, unless it's particularly controversial. But that was it. You know, it's only Brexit that has made each step, where we're getting a focus from the media on the process, on individual steps within a negotiation. It's only Brexit that's done that I can remember in my life. You know, it's because of the toxic nature of politics on the issue of Brexit. What we need to get back to is a point where the mainstream media are less interested in the process and only the conclusions. Then the negotiators can get on with that process, get the job done of coming up with practical solutions, And I think that's what, well, I know that's what Labour is hoping for. They've said so. That the public are more interested in what they're doing with the NHS, with education, with the economy. That's where they want the focus to be. Starmer said so. He says, want the focus to be on this, what we're doing here, what we're doing here, what we're doing here, what we're doing to make people's lives on a day-to-day basis better. Less interested in boring technical discussions with the EU. And the fact that Sunak seems to be moving towards this idea of EU talks that are deeply boring and of no interest to the media will help that, because without reading all the actual articles, I did do a scan. I did search for the news because I knew it'd be there somewhere. So I had to flick through the headlines. I haven't read all the articles, and sometimes the headline does not reflect the article. But the report in the Telegraph hailed a breakthrough. The Daily Mail reported it as a deal has been a step closer. The Daily Express actually said a deal had been done. It's done, finished. Agreement's actually been reached. Okay. Basically, the very pro-Brexit mainstream media seem happy now to leave Northern Ireland alone, at least for now. Hopefully it'll stay that way. As I say, Brexit has got its problems closer to their readership in the Tory heartlands now, so they need to focus there. They need to, if they're to save their precious Brexit against a background of lower and lower support for the madness. And wherever our gutter press are not focusing, well, there the government can actually get things done. When people ask what's Labour's plan for Brexit, that's it really, at least for the first Parliament. Quietly get things done while the media and public are focused elsewhere. When Starmer said in 2020 that he didn't want the next election to be our Brexit, and I thought to myself, yeah, tough luck, mate. Brexit's going to be huge in a few years' time, and indeed it is. But he's right if you interpret the words as he doesn't want the focus to be on Brexit. He wants it to be on the NHS and education and the economy. Brexit views are still highly polarised. Support's draining away, but the toxicity is still there. Make the process as boring as possible. Stop the media getting much traction with stories about Brexit talks, and you're free to just get on, make improvements. Because by the time you've got your improvement and it's implemented, you can show people how it's better. You can show them. You can say, now, as a result of this, we've got fewer checks here, or we've got easier checks here, or quicker checks here. Or we've improved this process so it's better. And you'll have businesses who are actually using the system going, yeah, this is better. And if Sunak wants to help out by dealing with some of the issues while he's pretending to be running a government, all to the better. If the protocol, because one of, when you look at Labour's Brexit policies, one of them is dealing with the protocol. If Sunak wants to deal with it, if he wants to have it properly up and running for the next election, that is one problem fewer for the next government to deal with. Obviously, no way of quietly doing something big like, rejoining the single market. But there is lots to be done before we can get around to that anyway. We need to sort out a working relationship with the EU right now. The plan for rejoining the single market, which I know doesn't exist with either Labour or the Conservatives at the moment, is years in the future. But we can't just wait years with this hands-off approach with the EU right now. It's not sustainable. So we need something that we can implement now while we move there. Because it's crushing our economy right now. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.